All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Judge Vincent C. Crawford, and I want to thank the Friends of Vincent C. Crawford, Inc., which is the campaign committee that is putting on this event for the evening. So thank you all for joining us on Facebook live here today. I'm just going to go over a few things with me as a candidate, and then we're going to open it up for questions. I will say this as it relates to Mr. Floyd case. I know there's a lot of questions going on around that. I sit as a judge, so I can't really comment about cases. But I would say this, I will procedure and process questions concerning the case I can answer. What are the due process issues that could be addressed? But other than that, I won't be able to answer any questions or make any comments about the case. I'm a 1987 graduate of Florida A&M University, go Rattlers. I graduated from law school in 1990 and went on to practice law and started my practice of law at Georgia Legal Services in Augusta, Georgia. And so I've been practicing law about 30 years. When I left legal services, I went to the district attorney's office in Augusta, Georgia, was a deputy chief district attorney there for 2 years, and then came to DeKalb County. I was in the DA's office in DeKalb County for 2 years under J. Tom Morgan. And then I started my own practice. So when I went out in private practice, I had a law that consisted of family law and juvenile court. So that was about 60% of my practice. And the other 40%, I was still doing court-appointed cases in criminal defense work, still handling murders, armed robberies, all kinds of cases. And then magically in 2005, something great happened. The Honorable former Chief Judge Winston Bethel came up to me and talked to me about being appointed as an associate magistrate judge. And I was appointed as an associate magistrate in 2005. 2006 came along and a position became open in juvenile court. And I got appointed to that position in juvenile court. And so that's where I've been for the last 14 years. In 2013, I started sitting by designation in Superior Court. So you see that on my flyer, you see that on my information. What does that mean? That means when I sit over in Superior Court, because one of the judges are out, would be out on vacation or out of the office, I sit in the position. I hear trials, murder trials, family law hearings. I do all of that. And I do that up to 10 weeks out of the year. I've been doing that for the last 7 years. Someone asked me, what was the highlight? What is the highlight of your career? I said, tell them back in 2016, I opened up my email and it said, you are invited to the White House by President Barack Obama. And the reason for that invitation was I was appointed by the late Justice Hines to chair the the Court Improvement Project, And as chairman of the Court Improvement Project, we and the state of Georgia invented or created the only data and case management system for children in the child welfare system. President Obama heard about it, sent his commissioner down. Commissioner saw what we did and says, hey, how would you like to come to the White House? And I said, yes, I would love to come to the White House. And to the White House I went, was able to present and be acknowledged that I was the only judge invited to the White House for that kind of presentation on technology. Currently, I'm working on with the task force of all of the classes of court. Court is not shut down, the building, just access to the building. So I'm working with Superior Court, Magistrate Court, Probate Court. We're all working, all your judges in DeKalb County are still working. We're still working on ways to open back up the court. And so if you have questions about the court system and what's going on with that, I'll be able to answer those tonight. I love working with the accountability courts. And I think that's the best thing that ever happened to Georgia. Working on the Criminal Justice Reform Committee and the subcommittee on the disproportionate impact on minorities, we were able to look at the data and show that poverty is the cause of a lot of issues for our young people. Poverty is the cause for a lot of issues of people coming into the system and remaining in the system. So we were able to look at that. But one of the great things about it is we were able to find a remedy here in DeKalb County. We're one of 2 counties in the state of Georgia that got the youth bill, which is a bill that covers 16 to 24-year-olds. And we've been able to collaborate with the solicitor's office, with the Superior Court, and getting people GED, getting them a job skill, and actually getting them employed and out into the community. Now, youth bill, I'm just going to give you a little bit about the youth bill. Youth bill, there are these gap jobs that exist right now in the United States. They pay above minimum wage, but they don't pay the salary jobs, the high six-figure salary jobs. And they're called the gap wage jobs. And those jobs are usually in construction, hospitality, culinary. And so, you know, I'm so proud of DeKalb because right now, as of now, we were supposed to only service 70 people over 3 years. We are already at 45 young people that we've gotten GED, job skills, and they're already in the workforce with Moody Construction, a minority construction company, a billion-dollar company that collaborated with us. And so by September, we can be proud in DeKalb County, we will honor the 70 young people 2 years in advance and being able to say that they're employed and they're out in the community being productive citizens. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I do in the community. You know, a lot of people come up to me and they ask, Judge, you know, how do you find the time to be a full-time judge and then turn around and do all this work in the community? And I said, you know, I got that from my dad. My dad was a little league coach with the PAL, Police Athletic League in Savannah, Georgia. And I was on the team and my brothers were on the team. But the one thing we had to do, we had to share my father with all of my other teammates that didn't have a dad. And so my father would go out and at night and go over there, chastise them about their grades, help them with their homework. At times, you know, he would go to their school, but we shared our dad, but he was an example of what you can do in the community. And he always taught us that, you know, you got to be the kind of community that you want. And so I serve in the community right now. My brother runs the Crawford Heights Stallions, my old neighborhood. And it's one of the prime little league teams in the state, winning championships all the time. And so we learned from him. And so I do all of my community service through the DeKalb Alphas. And we're here in DeKalb County. We are a national organization. We are a part of and participate in my Brother's Keepers program, as Obama mentioned yesterday, that, you know, we need more communities to participate. Well, we participate in that. But the one thing we did years ago, I was the director of education services. We moved from a $5,000 a year program to a $30,000 a year program. So it costs us about $30,000 for us to manage our young boys from 3rd through 12th grade. They have 2 enrichments every month that they come to, where we give them, I help develop what is called the CEL curriculum, community service, education, leadership, and life skills. So if you're interested, we are accepting applications for young men from 3rd through 12th grade. You can go to www.dekalbalphas.org and the application is on there and we're taking applications. And I won't go into all of it, but my community service is very broad. If you go to the website and see under awards and recognitions, you'll see I've gotten things from Jack and Jill of America for community service, the DeKalb County Juvenile Court, the Romaine T. Powell Award. I got that for working with delinquents in the state. I've got the Augustus Witherspoon Award from my chapter, DeKalb Alphas, for my work in the community. But I do believe that community service is everyone can do it, no matter what your title is. And just because I wear a robe doesn't mean I'm not human and I can't serve the community. And finally, I want to just talk to you a little bit about the campaign, and you can start your questions, any questions you may have. Talk about the campaign. Like I said, I've been sitting in Superior Court for 7 years and doing everything over there. And one of the things I'm proud of with DeKalb County, we are 100% participant in accountability courts, which means we have all of the accountability courts, mental health, veteran, drugs. We have all of the courts that the state offer in terms of accountability courts. And I want to just say this, because you're going to start seeing some cuts. Accountability courts have helped us keep there was a 30% reduction. Let me start there. When they passed this act in 2009, there was a 30% reduction by 2011 of African-American males going to prison. That's how effective accountability courts have been. And so what has happened is we're seeing is that what we're able to do with accountability courts, we are addressing the issues that bring people into the system. And we've been doing that in juvenile court for a very long time, and in working with parents and working with kids. addressing the issues that bring people into court so they don't have to come back. They don't return to court. We address the recidivism issue. So that is what we've been doing. And I've gone over there and sat in accountability courts, and I've met the parents of some of the kids that are in care in juvenile court. But that experience has taught me that there's some work that could be done with the parents. I've done that work over in Superior Court. I'm familiar with this docket. The seat I'm running for is the open seat to retired Judge Clarence Seeliger. Judge Seeliger, a great warrior and advocate back in the day. He pretty much desegregated the courthouse, took down the Confederate flag. So I'm filling that seat, and I'm asking for your vote. And I'm familiar with that docket. I've sat over in Superior Court during this time of the pandemic as well for some of the Superior Court judges. So what I'm going to do at this time is I didn't set this up. My committee didn't set this up for me to keep talking, but I want to open it up for questions. So why, I have a question here. Why and how have you, hold on, let me get it here. Let me get to, okay. Why and how have you been able to sit in Superior Court by designating, and how that contributes to you being qualified to take the full-time seat? Okay, so what happened is in Georgia, we have a Georgia statute that states that juvenile court judges are permitted to sit by designation in Superior Court periodically. We also have a second statute that permits us to hear all issues involving family law, which are child custody cases are most of the ones I get. So there are two different statutes that permit me to sit by designation in Superior Court. And so when I go over there, I sit as a Superior Court judge. And so that it's by statute that I sit in Superior Court judge, sit as a Superior Court judge. Can you share some of the changes that you helped bring about in juvenile court? Well, some of the changes I helped bring about in juvenile court, first of all, it was the CPRS2, which was to mainly try to develop a system. The problem we were having, there wasn't a data sharing system that we could use across multi-agencies. One of the fascinating things I found out when I went to the White House, and everyone was fascinated about, was that nobody was exchanging data. And what that meant was the Department of Education wasn't exchanging data with us, DJJ, and everything right now is data driven in terms of grant money and where your problems are. And so in creating that data driven system and managing people through the child welfare system, we've been able to, managing kids through the child welfare system, we've been able to develop something that a judge, I can look at, I can get on the bench and tell what school this child is in, what placement they've been moved to. So that is one of the things. The other thing, other thing we had was the traffic division. And juvenile drivers, we wanted to make sure that they were equipped with the right tools to drive. And so what I was finding was kids would come to juvenile court with a traffic citation. They would get a fine, parents would pay the fine, the kids didn't get any lessons from it. So I looked into the code book and looked up the statute and say, hey, I got with the other judges that said, let's form a traffic court specific and make it conducive to juveniles. And that's what we did. And so what we have now is more of an informal program for juveniles, where when they come in, we actually send them to defensive driving. They have to go do community service, and then they have to go and they have to write an essay. And so the defensive driving keeps points from being assessed on their license, and then it doesn't drive up the parents' insurance. And then the community service, I do in exchange of a fine, because the parents end up paying the fine. And then the essay, they have to come in and tell me what they learned in doing community service. We found it to be a very effective program. Parents have been asking, can we put it in the schools? I said, no, we can't put it in the school because it's in juvenile court and that we, the jurisdiction, that handle that. So that's one of the other things. The other thing is connecting the court to the community. And so Judge Haynes created our DeKalb County Juvenile Justice Council. And what we're doing now is making them more active. And what they are for us is our community liaison. There are a lot of grants, community-based grants, that we can't get. And so that is what we're doing is they as a committee or a group are able to go out and solicit funds. One of the things they're doing now, they're feeding our juvenile court families that cannot, during the pandemic, they can come up to the courthouse on Wednesdays, and that group of citizens in DeKalb are actually feeding them. So any more questions? Can you share some of the changes that you help bring about? Will these changes make a difference in Superior Court, and why? Okay, so some of the changes that what we find is that if I always tell people this, if I fix the child and I fix whatever dysfunction there is with the child, then you're not going to worry about them as an adult. And so I think juvenile court is crucial in that what we attempt to do is give families and children tools to change their behavior. And if they grab a hold of those tools, effective programs like my commitment alternative program that I run at juvenile court, that is the high intensive supervision program. What we found is some of the young men we have to take, and women we have to take out of the normal education environment. They get their GEDs and we take them through a series of programs, Thinking for a Change. Some of those kids are in technical school, some of them in college, some of them are working, some of them have gone off and got married with children. But the thing about it was offering them those tools. Those effective things in juvenile court prevent them from coming up in adult court or being a part of the adult system. And that's the kind of work we're doing. What is my stance on crime and punishment, and how do you approach cases in the courtroom? Well, the first thing I think for all judges right now, because of the accountability courts, is what is the issue that brought this person here? Okay. Is it drugs? Is it mental health? Is it some kind of post-traumatic stress? Now, I'm going to tell you this. What we have found is probably about 90% of the kids that come through the juvenile court system have some kind of trauma going on. And we're looking at brain trauma now. And I'll tell you this, years ago when I got on the bench, that they used to, when diagnose kids, anybody under 18 with bipolar or schizophrenia. Now I have 10, 11-year-old kids diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, and they're on adult drugs. And I'm saying that because the impact of that of some of these adults is that when they get to the adult system, you got to figure out why are they there? Because if you address the issue that brings them there, if you address the mental health, you address the drugs, then you're on course for them not to return. And that's what we're doing in the court system now. I do that with juveniles, and I do that over in the adult court when I sit for the other judges. Is okay, your lawyer, tell me what are the mitigating things that are going on with your client? What are some of the things that they can do and be productive? And let's channel that energy towards that and not towards any crime. So that is my typical approach in addressing issues, especially when a child or adult comes before me. As a Superior Court judge, how will you apply the law in an equitable way? This came up in one of the forums, and it came up by the way of one of the forums they were talking about implicit bias. And one of the things that came to mind for me is I'm a part of the National Council of Family and Juvenile Court Judges, and I went to this seminar, I went to our conference, And they had this seminar workshop on implicit bias. And I was like, well, do I really need this? And I was like, well, I'm going to go. So I went. And one of the things that you learn is that we all have biases, some of them race, some of them gender, religion, culture. We all have biases. The issue for a judge is when you take your biases and you channel other people's story or channel other people's situation through your bias, and then you draw a conclusion or make a decision. And so one of the things you have to do as a judge is make sure you keep yourself in check. And the law does a pretty good job of that, in that you make sure that, number one, that I'm applying the law and I'm applying the law correctly as it relates to this case. So I even went further with the disproportionate minority impact committee I worked on. They were offering implicit bias for DeKalb County for juvenile court. Well, I opened it up to the public defender's office, the district attorney's office, all of our staff in juvenile court, and we've had it twice. And I wanted all the employees to go to it, because working with people in the public, everybody have their own biases. You have to make that, we have to all put them in check, from the judge to the clerk to the probation officers. We have to all put those things in check to make sure that we're applying fairness and we're being equitable in our decisions. Any other questions? How would you use your leadership position to help improve the injustice against minorities? And I think that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, in that I want us to stop making a presumption that African Americans, specifically, or Hispanics, have to have a hold on the system. Let us do this. Let us approach it from this angle. Let us approach it from the angle of let's do those things in the community so people are not in contact with the system. And that goes to what I was talking about earlier. The young people that come through court, I'm like, listen, I want you to be a taxpayer, not a tax burden. I want you to be able to be out in the community working and help paying some of the taxes that I'm paying. And so the way we do that is we have to, number one, we've found that education is the key. I believe every young person, every adult is talented at something. There's something you're able to do and do very well. And I also believe that there's also a need out there for whatever you are able to do. And your purpose is when your talent meets that need. And so I think what we have to do, and what we are doing in the system, is channeling people's energy towards finding their purpose. And so that is important. And a lot of seminars and conferences we're going to now, they're doing a lot of mindfulness with judges, and a lot of seminars on behavior, studying people's behavior, looking at people's behavior, because those are some of the issues that we're facing in the criminal justice system. Mental health, should Georgia Regional be dealing with mental health? Of course, but mental health is now in the court system. It's an issue we have to deal with because it's driving someone to engage in negative behavior. So that is my take on that. That the community is the pulse of what's going on in any county. And so staying connected to it is very important. That's why I do the community service that I do with the young men on the weekend. And that's why I try to be a part of these committees that have done the Georgia Criminal Justice Reform committees that have actually gone into the communities and have done the studies. You know, I never thought the day would come where I'll be looking at graphs and data on the screen to tell me where the problems are in the county with children coming into care. But hey, that's what I'm doing. And so it's staying connected. It's very important that you stay connected to community, and that's why I stay connected and enjoy the experience of staying connected. All right, any other questions? I think I don't see any other question. Talk more about working in Superior Court and those types of cases. All right, so I want to make sure that you understand with Superior Court, those the types we're not talking about the violent crimes. We're talking about those types of cases, those nonviolent crimes. And again, like I talked about with issues that bring the kids into, bring the adults into the court system. One of the other things they're talking about is to get rid of the box. And that is going to be a major step. So when you hear our legislatures say that they're going to get rid of the box on the employment application, that is going to be a major leap, because people get on probation and then they have all these fees, but they can't get a job because they have a record. And so one of the things that we're really hoping for is, and I think Home Depot has really been behind this, is that getting rid of the box for those nonviolent offenders, so those people, those adults can actually, again, become taxpayers, get jobs, and work. And so that's one of the things that you're looking at, but it's all connected. I believe that, we have to deal with both children. We have to deal with the adults to make whole families. And DeKalb County is a very diverse county. We have over 120 different languages. So we are multicultural county. And so we have to deal with other cultures, trying to get a hold of like refugee centers or their community culture center to help us even in the court to get them services that they need, get the family, get the children services. That's even happening in Superior Court. So the court is working very diligently to actually be a part of the community and solving some of the things that are going on in Superior Court as well as juvenile court. But again, we've had accountability courts in juvenile court. Superior Court has now caught on since the 2009 and have been able to, we've been doing them for a while, because that's the idea, is redirecting behavior. Juvenile court, we redirect behavior. Superior Court, we're trying to do in Superior Court. I need to wrap it up because my team have told me to wrap it up, and I'm going to wrap it up. I enjoy my my time on the bench, but I know with all of this that is going on, that our young people are numb. I saw the video of Mr. Floyd, and I was a little numb. But there was this 18-year-old girl back in the 60s with no children, and she joined the civil rights movement. She was a part of the Jose Williams Crusader for Voters. She had to be trained on taking the test to vote, but she went down there, suffered the humiliation. She walked through the Klan. She saw friends get beaten at the counter of Woolworth. She saw friends jailed and hosed. And that was all for this one thing, the hope to vote. So I say that to say this, that my mom called me the other day, and she called me, and I got her a Facebook page because she wanted to follow my campaign. And thank you to the kind words that you've put on there about me as a judge, because she was in tears about the kind words that you all have said, and me being fair and making sure justice is served, and my commitment to the community. And that message brought her to tears. But she, her hope in doing all those things in the 60s was just the chance to vote. But her tears were more about the fact that her dream of her child being on a ballot was more than she could have ever hoped for. So I'm on that ballot, and this is my mom and all of those civil rights fighters that protest, and all of them, because it's not just to vote, it's to be on this ballot. So to my dad for my community service, to my mom and dad for all you did during the civil rights era, this is the dream, is that I will be on this ballot, and I'm on this ballot. I've worked to get on this ballot, and I'm asking that you vote me in as your next Superior Court judge. Listen, although you cast your vote in silence, you've seen me post this, although you cast it in silence, your voice speaks loudly. Your vote speaks loudly. So go ahead, cast your vote, and I hope on June 9th you cast your vote for Vincent C. Crawford for your next Superior Court judge. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening.